Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, hello and a warm welcome to all our guests tuning in, whether it's good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're delighted to have you join us for another engaged conversation. Today, we have the joy of being in conversation with Jeanette Bronée, a 3-time TEDx speaker. Great stuff that we want to dive into, especially talking about what's it called? Power pausing. So we're going to hear some insights into that. So welcome, Jeanette. Thank you for making the time to be with us.
Thank you very much for your care and attention to important topics across your conversations in general.
Oh, so looking forward to this one. And we want to give you the proper introduction. I know I shared a little bit, but John, why don't you do the bio
That
first?
we do. Yeah, that we do. All right, let me do that. Okay, so Jeanette Bronée is a global keynote speaker, and as Sandra said, 3-time TEDx speaker. She's a culture strategist and author, and she has spoken at the UN and other global platforms, sharing the secret to unlocking our human advantage through her transformative practice of power pausing. You notice how I paused and I did that, right?
Yeah, very powerful.
Okay, all right. A former burned-out fashion executive, Jeanette left her career in 2004 to found Path for Life, helping people and organizations tap into their full potential. Her book, The Self-Care Mindset, and we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, as we go through this, explores how asking better questions helps us transform anxiety into clarity and confidence. Originally from Denmark and now a New Yorker. I didn't quite get the accent there right, but anyway, Jeanette is passionate. She's a passionate mental health advocate. And when not working, she enjoys skiing, hiking, motorcycling, and spending time with her Rottweiler, Maya, who I understand has her own Instagram account. Maybe we'll talk a bit about that as well.
We'll have to look that up.
But Jeanette, welcome again. And so looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, and love how you one of the things you point out is asking better questions, because you'd have seen, for us, that's habit 3, ask, don't assume. But let's back up a bit and talk about what got you into this work that you're doing about, the self-care mindset, knowing how to have a better relationship with yourself so you can have great relationships with others around you, and all the wonderful work that you're doing. Where did it all start?
Thank you so much. I'm sitting here thinking, what is the red thread through it all? Because when looking back, you can see it all lining up to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the pivotal moment was losing both my parents to cancer a year apart, right before I was turning 40. And being told that it was only a matter of time before I was going to get cancer too. And I thought, well, I need to figure out how to change that verdict, number one. And also I asked, well, isn't there something I can do other than just starting preventive chemo, they called it, and and potentially even getting surgery and taking off, having a mastectomy and so on and so forth. And I thought, this is all pretty severe stuff.
Yeah.
What can I do? Isn't there something I can do? And I was living in a very hectic, stressful situation in the fashion business. And during the time that my dad was dying, my mother died suddenly, and I didn't get to say goodbye. And then my dad died we knew for a long period of time that there was no cure.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent 5 months where we didn't know which day it was going to be.
Right.
And it really changed our relationship. It changed how we connected with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we made a really conscious effort to make that happen. We faced our fears. We talked about it. We were curious together about the meaning of life. And we asked a lot of questions about how he felt about, ending his at 60 point. He was now 66, 67.
Mm-hmm.
And me looking forward to my, I felt like I was in the middle of mine and he was at the end of his. And he just wanted to give me as much advice as possible. And so what ended up happening was that we explored. We just started talking about all the different reasons why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And it led me to say, okay, well, I was in the fashion business. I shortly after decided that it was time to do something else, because it was at this point where people would call me and complain that they had gotten shipped a green and they had ordered a red. And I was like, do you really care that much about that? Okay, I understand there is you, but I don't really care about it. I
Yeah.
really care about something else. And I realized how important it was for me to share some of the lessons that my dad had taught me, actually, since I was a little girl. Now it gets back to all the red threads that come from when it all started. And looking back, I realized that the thing my dad always did with me when I was anxious and scared as a little girl, I had a lot of anxiety and fear of I couldn't be alone. And there were so many things going on, absolutely terror-stricken at some points, and for no apparent reason. And my dad had this thing where he said, well, if you think there's a monster under the bed, instead of telling a child there is no monster, believe me, trust me, it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
To build trust, you got to like get down on your knees, look under the bed and look for the monster together.
Yeah.
That's how you make a child feel safe. And
Yeah.
so my dad kind of did that when I was a child. He never said, oh, don't worry about it. He always dove into me and asked me to tell him more about it.
Yeah.
And so I would talk about my fears. And as I was talking about the monsters and so on and so forth, he would just listen and listen and listen. And then he would say, well, what would you do about it if that happened? And I would talk and talk and talk, and I would make all these stories. And he had the patience to listen to all of that. And then he said, okay, well, now you know what you would do about it if the worst happens, and
You're
now
ready.
go try. And
Yeah.
so looking back at that and having these conversations when he was dying, I realized, wow, we have such an untapped potential as human beings, but we dismiss ourselves and our emotions so fast that we miss out on this not only amazing humanness that we all have, but also we miss out on understanding and learning who we are and understanding ourselves better. And losing my dad started me on that journey to actually truly dive into doing that, instead of just dabbing at it in sort of like ways that seemed fashionable at the time, but really spending time listening to ourselves and each other. Yeah,
I love that. That is so powerful. I mean, it resonates, as Andrew was saying earlier, so strongly with what we talk about and teach in habit number 3, which is all about ask, don't assume. The assumptions that we have that, just because something is important to me, clearly it's important to everybody else, and because something's not important to me, then clearly it's not important to anybody else. We carry these assumptions quite deeply in there. And one of the things we share with people is to be able to navigate your own chart your own course, navigate your own course going forward. You've really got to figure out what's important to you, because then you can make the asks of the people around you to help you get what's really important to you. But many of us don't take that chance to stop and think, what's really important to me? And I think for you, as sad as it is, it probably was a blessing to have had that opportunity to face the diagnosis, to face to face death, and then think, okay, well, I've got this length of time. I've got to figure out what's important to me. Most people don't have that, and we're not wishing it on anybody.
Right.
But what do you do? So, what can you do to encourage other people to take that, to face the to look to the future, shall we say, is part one, and then once you have looked to the future, how do you then help people figure out what's really important to them?
Personally, a lot of the questions I asked myself when I was looking at this huge transition from being a fashion executive, and I then had my own company and distribution company and so on and so forth, and it was quite successul, and yet being like, I'm not happy.
Right.
So I really
One
wanted
kind
to
of
understand.
successful.
Yeah. And I was, I needed to understand what is it that makes me happy. And I think one of the things I learned is that we look for the answer too fast.
Yeah.
We rush to look for the answer instead of looking for the questions. And that was one of the things I had learned from my dad, right? To keep asking questions, to explore more and to keep learning more. He was an executive search consultant. So of course he knew all about asking questions of people to get them to really dive in and open up their insight and also getting to know them better. And he always said, just ask people questions. They love to talk about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Indeed.
so that's how you really get to know people, right? And so I took these clues from him and asked, well, what do I care about? Like, what's important to me? How do I want to live my everyday life? What are some of the aspects of my everyday life that I want to make sure are part of it? And so I asked questions, not that was what career do I want to do and what do I want to be when I grow up kind of thing, but really just everyday stuff, like trying to understand, what does a good life mean to me?
Yeah.
And then
Great.
from there, I started forming, well, what does that look like if it is a career? And then I realized I want to work with people. I want to help people unlock their potential, because that was how I always felt my dad engaged with me. So I was inspired by this relationship I ended up having with him towards the end, much deeper than what I had. He'd always been an inspiration, but that was truly transformative. And one of the things that also happened was he was receiving all these emails and letters from CEOs that he had talked to over his career. And he had no clue. These were almost gifts at his so-called departure. They were saying goodbye and they were saying thank you. And they said, that conversation we had, the way you asked me questions, transformed how I approach my life.
Wow.
And I owe you my career today.
Oh.
And it wasn't that my dad had helped them or networked or anything, but he had helped unlock an insight inside of them that had given them the true force and the true insight and direction in life, which all comes back to what we care about.
Yeah. And I love
And so
that.
that was the key.
And I love the way that you paused when you said we answer too quickly. We're afraid to just go deeper with our emotions and what our emotions are telling us. And we really don't listen that well to ourselves or to others. So when you talk about like the self-care mindset, how does that feature in, this idea of getting better at paying attention to our emotions or listening well? How does that feature in the mindset that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think of our emotions, like we have this fix-it mentality, right? We're like a Band-Aid culture. We're like,
Yeah.
we'll fix that, and we'll fix it really fast, and then we keep going. And then we think of resilience as being this tanker that just keeps going, right?
Yeah.
And I used to be a sailor. I used to race sailboats also with my dad, but also later in life. And resilience is really being able to navigate whatever comes your way, because you can map a plot and plot a plan. That doesn't mean the wind and the waves and the other boats are not going to interfere with you. So you really have to be agile and continue to look for what are the circumstances, what is happening, and work with the team and the crew and the boat and so on and so forth. That to me is true resilience, is to keep figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that happens in our fix-it culture is we like to label something and then try to just, I don't know if we can say suppress it. And I think that's one of the reasons why we see so much in terms of mental health issues, right?
Yeah.
That people are not working and not being taught. Kids are not even being taught to work with their emotions.
Yeah.
And I have compassion for that. I'm not trying to judge it. I have a lot of compassion for that, because I grew up with a bipolar mother, and she was afraid to ask for help because she thought that meant she was crazy. And so she tried to pretend that she wasn't ill. And with other people, nobody knew. She was the light of the, she was the light for everyone. And they were all like, oh my gosh, she's so. But then at home, she was struggling and it was difficult. And I blocked my emotions as a child, right? I blocked my own emotions and just kept going. And so I realized later on, when I was burning out and breaking down and having these conversations with my dad, I realized I need to integrate my emotions. I need to understand what they are. That's what's going to make me strong. Because now I can ask, okay, if I feel this way, what do I need so I can feel that way over there, which is what I want to transform my emotions into. So it's not like blocking them. And so the self-care mindset was born out of studies of mindfulness practice, Buddhism, felt sense focusing. Like I've studied a lot of different modalities that would became part of my practice for many years, coaching people. But also I felt like I wanted to share tools that were tangible for people to work with their emotions. Not in a way that, a therapist would, because going to a therapist is a different, we get to have a witness and work with somebody. So I'm not trying to say this is instead of therapy. I'm saying this is what I've learned from years and years of working with asking questions and how that shifts the mindset. Yeah. It also is relative to hypnotherapy, because all day long, our self-talk is like self-hypnosis. The way we talk to ourselves becomes the way we see the world, right?
That's so true.
And I partly saw that with my mother, but I also learned it through studying all these things. And so one of the things that I really took away from both studying and learning and working with people and myself and my mom and my dad, like all of these imprints along the way, is that mental health is, and again, I'm not saying this is a fix for mental health, but I'm saying that one of the things I learned from working with people that are struggling with mental health, we're not talking mental illness, mental health, is the lack of listening to the heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like we're not able to listen to ourselves, and we're dismissing ourselves all the time. And so we're not actually getting a way to listen to what we really care about. And so we're trying to fit in and doing things that are against our own joy. And I think that's one of the reasons why I burned out the first time I burned out, was I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't listening to my heart. If I had paused and listened, I would have left that industry along much earlier.
Takes a lot of courage, though, doesn't it?
Does, yes.
It takes a lot of courage.
I was just gonna you've touched on an example there, but I was just gonna say, how do you bring that alive? What does listening to your heart really look like? Somebody who's out there, give me an example. What is that in practical terms?
Yeah.
I'm a guy. We need these practical
I
terms.
know.
We need to understand.
Well, that's where power pausing comes in, right? That is that moment where we're like about to react to something because we get angry or we get anxious or we get, and we're like, and then we're like, okay, let me just pause for a moment and let me check in here. So power pausing has 3 stages. It has sort of like the physical pause, where we just allow the nervous system to calm down so that we're not on survival mode, triggered by cortisol and adrenaline and so on and so forth. And we can allow that just a couple of breaths to let ourselves land a bit, that we're actually even able to listen, that we're not up in the head just reacting to triggers around us, but allowing that moment of just being like, oh, let me just settle back into my body.
Yeah.
And then we're noticing how we feel. And so we can be like, oh my God, I am really upset right now. I'm really, whatever it is, I'm anxious right now. I'm upset right now. I feel hurt right now. Like whatever it is we're feeling in there, just acknowledging that for a moment actually allows us to reclaim agency over it. Yeah. It's the dismissing it that makes us feel more fragile, whereas acknowledging how we feel actually gives us back power of choice.
Yeah.
Right? And so then the next step, and that's that emotional listening is the second step of the power pause. And then this third stage, or maybe I should also add, in that second stage of the power pause, we're allowing more serotonin, the well-being hormone, to come in. And also, if we're with other people, oxytocin, when we feel more listened to, when we feel met, and so on and so forth. So hormones change and we start opening up, and we actually start being able to connect with what the heart, and what I call the heart is what we care about. And so then we take that to more of the consciousness piece and the growth mindset piece, which is the third pause, which is saying, well, why does this really matter to me? Why do I really care about it? Why is this so important? And so we're asking some of these questions to help realign ourselves with the purpose we're trying to achieve. And that, I think of that as almost like the courage of the lion heart, right? That's the heart, right? We're reclaiming agency to make up a choice, to have that power of choice and saying, no, I understand I feel this way over here. Like this is what's going on. But what I really want is I want to get over here. I need to move over here. Like this is what matters to me. This is where I'm going. This is what I need to achieve. This is what matters to me. And And then we can ask, what do I need so I can get over there? And then we start plotting our way forward. And so I don't think of listening to the heart as this sort of soft place. I actually think of it as a very strong sense of conscious and caring that that comes from that courage to actually really admit to ourselves what matters.
Yeah. And that's such a powerful, strong point to make. I heard somebody say what you own, you can then control. And because we are, I suppose, just generally taught to not pay attention to our emotions, to be
Yes.
more logical and rational, not realizing that we're always being blindsided by the emotion. We're making the decisions emotionally anyway. We're just justifying them logically. So if we can pause and own those emotions, then we can control what we do next, or we have more power over what we do next. So I love the way you articulated that from a position of strength rather than just being emotional and weak, which unfortunately tends to be the narrative around it.
Yeah.
How do you bring that into the workplace? Because these words are just being introduced. I think COVID helped wedge the door a little bit more widely. Hopefully we won't forget just how human we were together through that COVID experience. But words like care and compassion, even courage, they're just getting permission to be spoken in the corporate world. How are you finding it with the work that you do? How do you introduce it there?
Well, I think a lot of times when I work with a leader, they're trying to understand how to build healthy relationships with their people because they know that a strong team is built on healthy relationships. And if they don't know, I'll tell them that that's what they need to
Please
focus on.
just say that again. That's kind of the mantra that we. Can you
Right?
just say
It's
one
like,
more time?
yeah, it's like you cannot build a strong team if you don't have strong, healthy relationships. We know that from sports. I was
Exactly.
a gymnast. I was picked for the competitive gymnast team at the age of 6, and I thought I had to fight all the others to be the best. And I realized, no, if we're not winning alone. We are winning together. And
Exactly.
the force of it is the strength of the trust that we built when we know we have each other's back.
Yeah.
And you know, and so this, and that was one of the challenges in COVID, right? How do we build this sense of togetherness when we're
Yeah.
not actually together and we have a screen between us?
Mhm.
And that was what sort of like, well, it's not perks and it's not parties and it's not ping pong,
Yeah.
it's healthy conversations. And so I think that was the trigger, right? That all of a sudden we're like, oh, wait a minute, how do we build healthy relationships when we're not actually in the room together? And
Mhm.
so power pausing and learning to check in with ourselves, because as I always say, if we don't have a healthy relationship with ourselves, if that mouse wheel or hamster wheel in the head keeps telling us how we're not doing enough, it's really, really difficult to connect with other people and praise them for anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so if a leader or any person for that matter is not building a healthy relationship with themselves, where they're like, oh my God, I feel so stressed right now. Let me not bring that to the conversation with someone else,
Mhm.
but rather, what do I need so I can have a more mindful, empathetic conversation with someone else where I can actually listen and learn what's going on for them or whatever that is, right?
Mhm.
And so one of the things I heard a lot was that leaders were like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not a therapist. I can't keep hearing people's problems and concerns, and I can't fix what they're nervous about. And I said, well, you're not supposed to.
Indeed.
We're
Mhm.
not there to care for people. We're there to care about people. And that's a conversation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
about feeling listened
Love it.
to. And I learned that from my dad too. Because I was so busy and so stressed out, running around, making sure he was comfortable, dusting, making food, making sure he was, had what he needed, and so on and so forth. And of course, there's a certain part of that I needed to do, but I was so stressed out about it. And so
Mhm.
he asked me he said two very different, two very important things. He said, why are you so angry with me? And I said, I'm not. And then I realized, oh, I sounded very angry. And then I had to check in with myself. And I said, Dad, I'm not angry with you. I'm angry at the situation. you're dying, I'm losing you, and I don't know how to deal with it. So I was able to own that emotion there
Indeed,
instead of just getting into a conflict with him. And that was me being able to, and that was because of all my mindfulness practice and Buddhist practice. And so I already knew that this was what was going to get me through, was the mindfulness piece and being conscious about my relationship with him. So, and then the next thing he said, I don't need you to take care of me. I don't need things to be perfect around me. I don't need you to care for me. I need to know you care about me. And that's a conversation. Come here, sit down, hold my hand, and let's talk. And that was the moment we changed and started having conversations instead of me running around cleaning the house.
The story you share there has so many parallels. There is there's the whole biblical story there of Mary and Martha, where one is all about doing the works and the other one is about spending time. We've had in the sort of couple relationship conversations that we've had, so many couples where, one is all focused on just putting food on the table or keeping the house tidy or doing all the things there. Look, all these things have to be done.
Or earning the money.
Being
out at the career and thinking.
And the other one is saying, well, hang on, what about the time? We just need to spend the time here, to spend the time together. And it's that ability to show care in a way that means something to the other person. Like your dad was saying, I know you care for me by doing all the stuff that you're doing, but that's not showing care for me. I want you to care about me. I want you to connect. I want to have that relationship.
Well, I think that just that phrase, not care for, but care about, is empowering on its own. Because, if we go back to the corporate world, that's something that leaders are both afraid of and frustrated by. Why do we need to keep spending time having conversations about people's personal lives when the focus this is not a babysitting environment, we're here to get a job done. But to say it's care about, not care for, that just opens up a whole different conversation.
So for a lot of the leaders, certainly some of the ones that we speak to, it's definitely not about caring for
not
the
getting
person.
into their business.
Not about caring for them. But a lot of them there's still the old mindset thinking, if I care about you delivering the results, they need to move on from that to actually, I care about you as a person.
Yes.
And that's the piece there. I don't know what insights, what tips do you have for them to show that kind of care in a way that's actually meaningful? I care about you.
One of the things I always say to leaders is, you don't have to solve people's problems. You're not here to solve their problems, but what you can do is give them back agency to solve their own. And you can do that by saying, what do you need so you can get past this obstacle? And so they start thinking, well, what do I actually need so I can get past this obstacle? What do I need so I can solve this problem? What do I need? And now they're starting to think constructively and creatively. Again, just asking a different question. So we have a tendency to ask people, why isn't this done? Well, what is the answer you're going to get? It's all the reasons why it's not done.
Because
why it's not done. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like, if we can simply say, so I notice this is not done. It's important that we're getting it done because this is why it matters. What do you need so you can get it done? Now we're constructively co-creating a solution. And so that shows support. That shows, from a leader, that shows I care about how you're doing something, and I'm having a conversation with you. I'm not going to tell you how to do it unless you're asking me for direct feedback, but I'm helping you figure it out. So as leaders, the most important job we have, I believe, is that we teach people how to think. And I'm not saying people don't know how to think, but how do we teach people how to think in this new world of ours, which is not about fixing problems. It's about finding solutions.
But that's a mindset shift even for leaders, because the old world is very much about, you go to the leader because they have the answers and they will tell you what to do. So it's teaching leaders how to be more coaches to help people think better through learning how to ask better questions, for leaders to ask better questions. Because even that idea of saying, what do you need to feel supported, is making it clear that it's not my job to fix it for you. But the temptation for many leaders is, okay, then I'll do it because we just need to get the job done and move forward with performance. Here's a question. Feel free to say, no, we haven't gone there. But have you, in the work that you've done in the corporate world, been able to show like tangible performance benefits, financial benefits of this new approach of being more of a coach as a leader and paying attention, caring about people, how that helps deliver better results?
Yeah.
Anything you can share on that
Yeah.
side?
And I think of it as being a facilitating leader, meaning a care-driven leader. Like we are aligning people with what we all care about. Like we have a shared goal, we have a shared purpose, and really being more inclusive in how we lead people by asking questions and talking about what do we all need so we can get there together. So that's one part of how the leader can look at it as being more not so much the coach as in the individual only, but facilitating a transformation, right? So I think of this as the new paradigm in the workplace of like, how do we unlock the human advantage that we have, which is that we can think and engage and act with care. Like we can do that in a discerning way, but we have shut that down. Most people are just performing and doing what they are set out to do, and they don't think, is there another way to do this? And the reality is we are professional problem solvers. That is our job every single day. That actually started when we were children at play, right? So all through our lives, we are supposed to be professional problem solvers, but we have become fixers that just do what we've always done. And so one of the things that happens when I teach power pausing to teams and to leaders, leaders find that they can more easily and faster support their people. They have found that people are performing better without as much need to check in. They are they're checking in differently. They are there's more like a feedback loop. They're just like, hey, I want you to know this is going on and this is what I'm thinking next. And then the leader can say, go for it. Rather than I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, and then the leader feels like it's their burden. So this is one of the things that I see change is that the leader feels that they're more engaged and less engaged with their team. It's a funny thing. Like they're spending less time, but they're feeling more like they feel like they have more information about what's actually going on, but they're spending less time trying to help people solve the problem. So that's one thing. And I hear that teams are also saying, or individuals are saying they're feeling a lot more focused, they're feeling a lot more confident. And all of that is saving us time. Can we measure that? I'm not sure. I don't know. How do we measure how much time we waste not being able to solve a problem and instead learning how to pay attention to what really matters by asking questions about, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve? So one of the things I encourage is that we, in a meeting, for example, when we see that we're solving the wrong problem because we're just fixing problems, I encourage leaders or anybody in the team to be able to raise their hand and say, can we just pause on this? What can we just reset the meeting? What is the challenge? What would good look like? What are we trying to achieve here? Let's reset and try to figure out, well, what do we actually need so we can get there? And so meetings are also more effective, right? And so it's this idea that we can shift these around. And I've heard from leaders that people feel a little uncomfortable because normally meetings is a lot about, hey, here's a download, and now you can ask questions. Right. And so a facilitating leader is a lot more, these are my thoughts. This is what we're engaging in. What are your thoughts? It's a lot more of a collective, collaborative intelligence that we're tapping into. That's a practice for leaders as well.
That's scary for leaders, for some leaders, and probably threatening in terms of, so what's my value add?
Because I actually think that I hear you, and yet it is a mindset shift, right? Because the one with the answers is not the one with the value. The one with the question is. The one with the question is. Because that's the one that has a growth mindset.
Great leaders ask great questions. I always remember that line. And totally on that page with you, but I can just see how the older mindset can get stuck. And the need is to shift to this more of a growth mindset culture.
Yeah. And what really happens is if we're sitting there and we're stressed out about something and we're not even noticing how that comes across, the whole meeting is shot. Like we have to work with that. And that's what, for example, a power pause is a good prep before going in. What am I thinking, right? Where are my thoughts at? How am I feeling? Okay, what do I need to focus on so that this meeting can be of value to the problem we're trying to solve?
There's so much in there. What I'm trying to think is who is the Now let's rephrase that. I was going to say who is the ideal audience, but do you have a pitch? What's your pitch to somebody to say you are actually an ideal candidate for power posing because this is what's going on in your life right now? How do you pitch it? Do you have a pitch like that where you come across people and you go, actually, I can see this is what's going to work for you because this.
I think anybody in a high pressure, high performance environment where either interaction and relationship building is critical. So, for example, salespeople, customer service people, anyone that's dealing with other people. I think it's important to learn to pause before we engage, that we really deal with our own
stuff,
thoughts and feelings before we throw them on other people. But I think in general, any organization where people make critical decisions and choices over and over and over all day long, to make sure that we're not making those without actually pausing and thinking about it first and make that discerning. There was a story about, the when we lost the astronauts because of the O-ring that blew out. So the investigation has been running for years, and I heard a keynote by the person who's directing that. I can't say his name properly, but Michael Sorello or something like that. I'm not good with names in terms of my Danish way of thinking. So anyway, but he said if we had just paused longer, that accident might not have happened.
Wow.
But they were pushing and they were stressed and they were under pressure, and they didn't pause for long enough to actually say, okay, what is the real potential here of something happening and not happening, and asking more questions about it. So that was one. Another one was a friend of mine just recently called me and said, I have decided to change the surgeon for my surgery because I didn't feel comfortable with the person who was going through the communication with me, because she basically told me that I'm asking too many questions. And it just felt like I was supposed to just accept what they were saying and doing. And I don't feel heard. I'm not going to go with that surgeon. And that is one person in a doctor's office who is supposed to be the patient connector, the patient, the one the patient works with.
Exactly.
And makes them feel calm and ready and
and so if they don't have the ability to pause and not snap at someone, we don't know how much money that's costing people because we don't hear it.
Yeah.
But it's costing businesses a lot of money that we don't have the tools to manage stress in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And now the need for collaboration, the need for very different people, very different functions, very different cultures around the world to work together and not necessarily together co-located in the same office, that need has gone through the roof. So how do we learn to pause more, listen more deeply, ask better questions to get a much better handle on what's going on? And like you say, unblock the things, care about people enough to unblock the things that are blocking them from performing at their best. That really changes the conversation and the culture. There is so much that we could dive into some more, Jeanette, but I'm conscious of the time. What have we not covered yet that you really wanted to share, or you really wanted to leave people with from the conversation?
I want to leave people with this, and that is that being human is not a problem to solve. We are an advantage to unlock and harness. That's the one first thing, right? Like stop thinking that we have to fix ourselves and start thinking that we have to understand and unlock ourselves, because we're all amazing and we can all change. A lot of people think they can't change. They can. The question is, we need to focus on how to change. What are the elements of change that we need to build into the process of change? And one of those is to understand how our emotions are information. Our emotions are information that helps us understand what we need so that we can take the steps of change, one by one by one by one. We focus so much on the end result, but we don't focus on the process of achieving it. So that's the second piece, is to pause and acknowledge how we feel and use those emotions as information to help us move forward. And then the third part that I want people to know is the faster you can accept the circumstances for what it is, instead of wishing it was different, the faster you reclaim agency over your life.
Very powerful. If you own it, you can control it. The faster we accept what's going on, the faster we can then make the right decision how we respond to it. That is so powerful. I knew this was going to be a great conversation, and wow, so much more that we could go into. But your book is beautifully positioned.
There you go.
Behind you. So tell us how can we find out more? How can we connect with you? Feel free to lift the book up and hold it to camera so that people know where they can get more detail.
There we go. Here's the book.
The self-care mindset.
The self-care mindset. Yes. You can basically get it anywhere books are sold, so to speak, as in, I don't know that it's in all the bookstores at this point, but online. You can order it online. And it's my baby.
Exactly. Wonderful.
All my work of years and years of coaching people are basically in this book. And it's really, I think of it as a book of tools. Yes. And one of the ways I think of those tools is that the book is in 3 sections: how we think better, how we engage better, and how we act better. And that's essentially what we humans, that is a beautiful skill that we humans have. We can do that with discernment, with care, and with mindful attention.
Amazing. And the more we step into that, the less we have to be afraid of AI, right? Because
well, I think it's a good point, right? We're afraid that we're going to be replaced, but there's one thing that AI cannot do, and that means it can choose what to care about.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Absolutely. There's so much there. If people actually wanted to connect with you, though, Jeanette, and for coaching or whatever it is, what's the best way to connect with you?
JeanetteBronée.com is my website, and you can find me anywhere on social. I'm on all the platforms. That doesn't mean I'm active there, because social media can burn you out if you don't watch it.
Indeed.
But I'm on LinkedIn as well. Jeanette Bronée, you can find me anywhere. I think I'm the only person in this world with that name, so I can't hide.
No hiding there. Wonderful. We will put all those links in the show notes so people can find them if they want to do that. Yeah. But Jeanette, it's been a
real joy.
Beautiful conversation. I mean, I've been scribbling notes here because they're actually what I've been doing as I'm going here is some thoughts come to me and I'm thinking, yeah, I need to share this with X and this with Y and this with Z. This will really help them where they are. So some stuff for myself as well. So some really, really powerful stuff in there. Really enjoyed the conversation.
And as I always say, the danger of doing these podcasts with wonderful people like yourselves is that my book buying bill just keeps going up and up, because I'll need to go get a copy of that as well.
No, I know. Yeah, it's I enjoyed our conversation so very much, and I hope it'll transform somebody's relationship with themselves.
I'm sure it will. Because you shared goals for us to grab hold of and do our power posing, where we can pay attention. You've given us permission to pay attention to emotions and then make a decision on how we're going to move forward. So that in itself was gold.
One final thought. We didn't talk about Maya.
I know. We forgot Maya.
Maya and her Instagram account. What's the story of Maya? She's a Rottweiler.
Maya, the Rottweiler girl on Instagram. She was pretty active for a while, too. She has not been as active lately. She's gone through 2 surgeries with her rear knees, one of each. And so she's recovering, and it's been lovely to see how a Rottweiler, who we think of as so, stern and can go through anything, she has actually sort of paused and looked at me and gone, "No, Mom, I need to pause right now." And I'm like, "Oh wow, you're even mindful of what you need." I love it.
Some self-care going on. Look at that.
It's like, oh my God, it's inherent in our instincts. It's not just because I always talk about how dogs have instinct and people have choice, right? But here I am, and I'm seeing it's part of her instinct to pause and check in with herself and being like, no, I need a pause. I need to sit down right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow.
She has choice too.
Look at that.
She's trying to have choice, and I'm respecting her needs.
Beautiful.
Well, we wish her a speedy recovery as well.
Thank
you so much for joining us on the podcast, and keep doing amazing work. This is the message that we all need to hear now to be humans better. Dig into that human advantage. So,
as we say goodbye, thanks to you, Jeanette, but also thanks to our audience for being with us yet again. Remember to take the time, do some power pausing yourselves, think about caring more about people than necessarily caring for them. There was another one in there I wanted to bring out, but there were so many in there. Remember that, what did you say? We can look on, the human advantage that we have. We can think. Remember that. Again, the distinction you're making with yourself, between yourself and Maya, as a dog with instincts, etc. We can think. Let's use our brains and use them in a way. Permission to think. Think about what really matters to yourself, what really matters most, and do something about it.
Yeah.
It's been great, and we look forward to seeing you all in the next episode.
Yeah.
But for now, it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Thank you so much, Jeanette.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for your care and attention to your audience.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.